English much better than my Vietnamese. It is an honor to be here with you. And how many of you are pastors? Can I see your hands? 1, 2, 3. Who? You're a pastor. 4 pastors. Of course, you guys over here. Yeah, all right. We got 4 or 5 pastors here, and I think some more coming. We're going to have a nice long day. We got a lot of time, so I'm just going to take my time here. Let me give you a little background of myself and how TTI got started, because I think it will help you if you understand all of this. I was a pastor myself for 36 years, okay? So you guys that are pastors, I kind of think like you think. I look at everything through the eyes of a local church pastor. I have 2 brothers that are presidents of missionary organizations, and with me being the 3rd, so there's actually 3 of us that have actually founded missionary organizations. And as a young man, back in my 20s, 30s, 40s, my brothers were always trying to get me to travel with them overseas. And so, you know, they're your brothers, they twist your arm. So I did a lot of traveling. And everywhere I went, I would notice that there were problems. There was a lack of resources and a lack of training. You guys have probably heard of Moody Bible Institute. I got my master's at Moody. Moody has produced more missionaries than any other Bible college in the United States. According to Moody, over 90% of the pastors in the world have had 0 formal theological training. None. 0. And when I first heard that statistic, I doubted it. But as I started traveling, I don't doubt it anymore. Everywhere I went, there was a lack of resources and a lack of training. I had limited resources. So I thought, I will concentrate on training pastors and church planters. And all I did was what I'd been taught, and I did the best I knew how to do. However, for example, I would start little Bible institutes here and there. I'd go into a little village in Africa or somewhere in Asia or Latin America, and I would buy a bunch of books and some study Bibles and find a good pastor and leave them there and help them start a little Bible institute to train people. And I felt like what I was doing was good, but I felt like it was nothing like the book of Acts. It did not remind me of the book of Acts, and that bothered me. Have you ever read the book of Acts? Yes. And then looked at your own ministry and thought, something's not right here? Has God forsaken us? Is God dead? Is he sick? Is the problem us? What's going on? It's not the same. What I would read in the book of Acts and then what I would see with my own eyes was not the same. And I long to see a movement of God. There's a verse in Psalms 44. It says, we have heard with our ears, O Lord, our fathers have told us about the great things that you have done in ages past. And all my life I had heard about what God had done. I'd heard about the mighty church planting movements. I'd heard about the great masses coming to Christ. I heard it with my ears, but I wanted to see it with my own eyes. And I was not seeing it. Well, I then began to, as I traveled, I began to hear about something called church planting movements, CPM. And if you're not familiar with that phrase, CPM, I'll probably refer to it 100 times today, church planting movements. And I heard about a missionary named David Garrison, who actually wrote a book called Church Planting Movements. My background is in the Southern Baptist denomination. David Garrison is a Southern Baptist. They call it IMB, International Mission Board, IMB missionary. He was located in India and in China some, that part of the world. And David wrote a book on these incredible movements, church planting movements that were occurring in parts of Asia. And it really intrigued me because as a church planter, I've been a church planter all my life. I started in 1978, I planted my first church. Okay, and I've been planting churches ever since. And so as a church planter, it intrigued me to hear what was happening in parts of the world. For example, the great the great illustration of church planting that people always refer to, church planting movements, is China, your neighbor to the north. China, when the communists took the country 70, 80 years ago, however long it was, there was less than 500,000 born-again believers in the country. Today, the numbers are just off the charts. I've heard as high as 120, 150 million. I don't know if anybody knows. But there are probably many more born-again Christians in China than there are in the United States today. Okay?
50,000 people accept Jesus Christ a day.
What's that?
50,000.
50,000 a day. Yeah, well, that's all right. There you go. But when you realize that growth came 500,000 to over 100 million after the missionaries were driven out, after that happened, there were no open denominations, Bible colleges. There may be scattered places, but for the most part, very restricted. Yet the church grew. I realize the church in China is not perfect. It's like the church in the United States. I realize there are issues. But the fact is, come on in, the fact is, how do you explain that growth? They did it without all the infrastructure, without all the resources that we have here today. It almost seems to me like the more resources we have, the slower our growth is, and the less they had, the more they grew. It's almost like Gideon's army. It's almost like the more soldiers he had, the less God was going to be willing to work on their behalf. I began studying the church planting movement of China and India, Nepal. Today, Nepal is the fastest growing church in the world. It is absolutely insane what is happening there. It's just incredible. And I began studying church planting movements, and I noticed that depending on the culture, depending upon the location, there were differences. It's always going to look different. But there were basic principles that were the same. Now let me hasten to say this because I don't want to mislead you. I'm a big proponent of CPM strategy. However, it's not perfect either. I would say CPM strategy has a great strength and it has a great weakness. This is my opinion. And there are people out there a lot smarter than I am who would say I'm crazy, but I'm just telling you my opinion. Okay, just my opinion. I would say the strength of CPM strategy is they reproduce and multiply rapidly. And that's what attracted me. That's what I love. You pastors, imagine leading someone to the Lord in your church who a month later has led 8 or 10 people to the Lord and he's discipling them. And 2 or 3 months later, 5 or 6 of those have gone out and led others to the Lord and they're discipling them. And 2 or 3 months later, 15 or 20 of those have gone out, and what pastor would not want to see that? And that's what we long to see. I love the fact that they reproduce and multiply rapidly. It's like they're like rabbits. They just multiply. That's the strength of CPM. The weakness of CPM is they reproduce and multiply rapidly. Their weakness is their strength, just like me. Okay, my strengths outside of the control of the Holy Spirit become glaring weaknesses. CPM has a great strength. They multiply rapidly. They have a great weakness. They multiply rapidly. They multiply so rapidly that sometimes the foundation is weak. The leaders that really understand the Scriptures are few. And that's why it's not unusual. The Church of China has had many heresies. It's had many isms and many issues that have sprung out of it. And the same thing all over the world because of a lack of a clear teaching and understanding of the Scriptures. So we looked at all of this. I love the fact that they reproduced, that they could plant churches and plant churches and plant churches and plant churches and do it overnight. I wanted that. But I didn't want to just plant churches. I wanted to plant strong, healthy, biblically balanced, and biblically based churches. For example, it is not, using CPM strategy, you can plant, in some cases, churches just overnight. Maybe even hundreds. But if you go back a year later, sometimes you will not be real excited about what you see. Okay? In other words, the death rate sometimes is very high. And sometimes those that do survive what's being taught there, you would almost wish they had died, okay? Because it can be poor. And I'm not saying across the board everywhere, I'm saying in some places. Some places. I want to emphasize that. I did not want to start a church that a year from now would be teaching Jehovah's Witness doctrine. That's not what I wanted to do. I don't want to spend my life doing that. I didn't want to start a church that a year from now I find out the pastor has 3 wives and whatever. That's not what I want to spend my time doing. I wanted to plant churches as rapidly as I could because the world is lost. People are going to hell as we speak. People are going to hell all around us as we speak. And there's an urgency. We don't have time to fool around or waste. If we're going to do it, we need to do it. All right? But I wanted to plant churches that would have a good biblical balance. And so what we did was, and when I say we, it was not me. I had nothing to do with this. All I did was raise the money. What we did, our team, was we developed a disciple-making strategy, a church planting strategy based on 2 Timothy 2:2. And why don't you open your Bibles there for a second. 2 Timothy 2:2. We believe this is the most important verse in the Bible dealing with discipleship. Many of your great discipleship ministries, if you ask them what verse they base their ministry on, their philosophy of ministry, they will often say 2 Timothy 2:2. Let me paraphrase it for you. Paul said, Timothy, I have discipled you. I now want you to disciple faithful people who will disciple others also. If you notice there are 4 generations, and I'm going to come back to this later, but you've got Paul mentioned, you've got Timothy mentioned, you've got faithful people mentioned, and you've got others also. And the implication with others is it just keeps going. Okay? Others who reach others, who reach others, who reach others, who reach others. That's the idea. But in that verse, you have 4 generations. You have Paul training Timothy, who trained faithful people, who trained others also. And that is the key verse that I want you to get a hold of today. And again, we're going to come back and talk to you about it in depth a little bit more this afternoon. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Vì cái nhu cầu của các học viên đa số là Việt Nam và nói tiếng Việt, cho nên tôi xin phép được tóm tắt lại những gì mà David vừa chia sẻ để rồi tất cả chúng ta cũng theo đuổi kịp cái dòng suy nghĩ cũng như là cái huấn luyện của ông. Lý do chúng ta phải làm như thế này là bởi vì tôi cũng muốn quý vị chúng ta không bị waste time doing translations. Tôi chỉ summarize cho quý vị nắm được cái ý chính thôi. Và tại vì David cũng là một cái người rất là well known and ông ta là cái người được thèm khát rất là nhiều cái học viện cũng như là các quốc gia khác nhau. Cho nên để maximize cái thời gian của David thì tôi nghĩ rằng đây là cái cách tốt nhất. Những gì mục sư tiến sĩ David Nelm vừa chia sẻ cho chúng ta đó là ông làm chứng lại cái background và cái lý do tại sao ông đến với vấn đề phát triển hội thánh mới. Gia đình ông có 3 anh em và cả 2 người anh em của ông cũng là những thành viên của những tổ chức truyền giáo trên thế giới. David đã có 40 năm, almost 40 years in church planting. Và ông là người đã có một cái lòng khao khát đam mê về vấn đề phát triển hội thánh mới. Theo David, ông có nói trong cái chia sẻ hồi nãy đó, thì ông luôn đề cập đến cái phong trào mở mang hội thánh mới là CPM. Và ông cho biết rằng là cái CPM này là một cái chương trình phát triển hội thánh mới rất là lan rộng và rất là exciting đối với ông. Và là người tốt nghiệp của trường Kinh Thánh Moody, ông cũng là cái người được huấn luyện bởi một cái trường huấn luyện giáo sĩ nhiều nhất trên thế giới. Và họ cũng là cái trường gửi đi sai phái nhiều giáo sĩ. Nhưng mà đối với ông đó, phát triển hội thánh mới là một cái phương pháp truyền giáo hiệu quả nhất. Do vậy thì cái chương trình CPM cũng có những cái điểm mạnh của nó và cũng có những điểm yếu. Mạnh ở chỗ là khi họ phát triển thì họ phát triển rất là nhanh. Nhưng mà yếu ở chỗ là khi mà họ phát triển quá nhanh và nó không có cái nền tảng của những cái lãnh đạo giữ được cái kiến thức kinh thánh cũng như là thần học đúng, thì nó đâm ra nó có nhiều cái lỗ hổng. Và khi phát triển quá nhanh thì cái death ratio, có nghĩa là các hội thánh đó, sinh trưởng ra rồi chết cũng rất là lớn. Cho nên đối với David đó, thì ông nghĩ rằng phải có một cái phương pháp phát triển hội thánh vừa nhanh nhưng cũng đồng thời vừa mạnh, và nó cân đối để giúp cho các hội thánh của Chúa phát triển được tốt. Và cái câu Kinh Thánh mà ông mới vừa chia sẻ chúng ta, đó là Timothy nhì đoạn 2 câu 2, là một cái phương pháp mà ông nghĩ rằng đó là câu Kinh Thánh quan trọng nhất trong Kinh Thánh, cho chúng ta biết quy tắc về vấn đề phát triển hội thánh và làm sao để dạy cho một thế hệ, để thế hệ đó tiếp tục dạy và tiếp tục sản sinh có những con người hầu việc Chúa.
Why don't you pull up a chair and sit here? That way you can...
I don't want to try. Don't go ahead, just keep going. And I summarize.
All right. If you need me to stop, just tell me to stop, okay? So anyway, from 2 Timothy 2:2, the idea is you want to make disciples who make disciples who make disciples who make disciples. Everywhere I go in the United States, I ask pastors, do you have anyone in your church who has led someone to the Lord and discipled that person to where they've led someone to the Lord and discipled that person? To where they've led someone to the Lord and discipled that person? To where they've led someone to the Lord and discipled that person? So far, I've only found one, and I found him this past week. Okay? It's very rare in the United States. But I can tell you, in churches that utilize CPM strategy, it can be pretty normal. It's almost the norm. And in some places, it is the norm. Okay? And that's what excites me, and that's what I want to see. In just under 9 years, we've seen 34,000 churches started. We have seen since January 1st, 1,408 churches started, and that was through March. 1,400 churches started this year. By the way, we don't count the churches till we see them. We do not use projections. We have to see them. Okay? We plant primarily amongst Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, and animist areas. A few exceptions, but that's primarily. Right now, as I speak, we are planting churches in 200 different unreached people groups. And that's a mouthful right there. And I'm excited about that. 200. We're starting churches in 200 different unreached people groups right now.
Amen.
We have targeted this year 20 unengaged unreached people groups, UUPGs. The UUPG is, here's the UPG, here's you and me, but here's the UPG. The UUPG is down here. They're at the very bottom. A UUPG means there are no known churches, and in most cases, no known Christians. There are none. And we have, on April the 1st, what's today, the 7th? Right? On April the 1st, 1 week ago, we pulled the trigger. We actually began the process. We've been training Timothy missionary teams. We're sending out national missionaries as opposed to American missionaries or Western missionaries. And we're targeting 10 UUPGs in Nepal, 10 UUPGs in India. And we are excited about that. Our church planters, we teach them to reach first the least of the least in their area. I always, whenever I would start a church, I would always try to reach people that no other church wanted. Because when I see the Gospels, when I see Jesus, I see him he cared for the rich, he cared for everybody. But I always saw him reaching out to the poor, the demonized, the sick. So we teach our people, reach those that other churches don't want. Go after the widow, the orphan. And currently, as I speak, our church planters are taking care of, and when I say take care of, I mean housing, feeding, clothing. They live in their homes. Over 2,500 orphans and widows. And we do not have to raise any money for that. Pastor Ernie's church supports TTI. Ernie, I've never had to ask you for money for an orphan or a widow, and I don't have to, because we teach the church planters when they start that church that it's that church's responsibility to care for the widow and the orphan. Isn't that amazing? 2,500 orphans and widows, and we don't have to raise any money for it. Along the way, we developed a curriculum. When I began TTI, we started with we just did what we could do, found whatever curriculum we could find. But in time, we developed our own curriculum. We wanted a curriculum that would cover the entire Bible, start on the first page of the Bible, work all the way through, cover the entire Bible. We wanted a curriculum that would emphasize evangelism, discipleship, and church planting, and that would utilize obedience-based discipleship, which we'll talk more about that in a few moments. And I couldn't find anything like that. I actually went to see a pastor here on the West Coast. Some people, people have different opinions. I love him. He's my friend, Mark Driscoll. Mark Driscoll started Acts 29. And Driscoll, I thought if anybody would know where I could find that curriculum, it would be him. He's the expert. And Mark looked at me and he said, there's no such thing. You will have to develop that yourself. And so that's what we did. We developed a curriculum that we've been very pleased with. You've been using some of the books here. We developed many partners along the way. Cru, Campus Crusade for Christ, is a major partner. We just this past week, we settled on another agreement to plant churches in 6 more countries together. And I think they would tell you what attracted them to TTI was the curriculum. They liked the curriculum. I can tell you it's working. I was just in Nepal in February of this year, just 2 months ago. Okay? In maybe 6-7 years, we've seen 5,000 churches started in Nepal. We will start 3,000 more churches there this year. That's a lot of churches. When I was there 2 months ago, I only visited churches that were 6 months old or less. Okay? Baby churches, 6 months old or less. Newly planted TTI churches. In every single church, of course, everyone that's reached is a first-generation believer. In every single church, not only had the church planter already raised up several of his own Timothys, church planting students, new believers who say, train me how to start a church. Each of the Timothys had already raised up their own Tituses. In our jargon, a Titus is Timothy's Timothy. So you got Paul, who disciples Timothy. The faithful people we call Tituses. The Timothy's Timothy is Titus, so we can distinguish it. In every single case, 6 months old or less, not most cases, every single case, there were already Tituses. The least amount of Tituses I came across in churches 6 months old or less was 3. One church, which was 3 to 4 months old, already had, I think it was 11 Tituses. That's not 11 church planting students. That's 11 church planting students raised up by the church planting students, led to the Lord by the Paul 3-4 months earlier. That's Book of Acts. That's exciting.
Now you have a new habit.
I'm going to get it down.
Alright. Tôi xin tóm tắt lại cái phần thứ hai là David để cho chúng ta biết rằng là với cái phong trào mới của Timothy Church Planting Initiative, họ có một cái website mà quý vị có thể vào được, đó là ttionline.org, ttionline.org, và chúng ta có thể theo dõi được số lượng hội thánh, số lượng người tin Chúa, cũng như là số lượng hội up to date, cái thông số mà họ theo dõi và các quốc gia. David cho chúng ta biết rằng đã có 39.000 hội thánh được mở ra trong 9 năm vừa qua mà ông đã làm việc. Khoảng từ đầu năm tới bây giờ thì có khoảng 1.400 hội thánh đã bắt đầu. Và ông nói rằng đây là những con số mà không phải là họ tiên đoán sẽ xảy ra, nhưng mà là con số đã xảy ra. Những nhóm người mà họ đã làm việc chung và phát triển đó thì thường tập trung vào những người theo đạo Hindu, những người theo Muslim là Hồi giáo, cũng như là Phật giáo, những cái khu vực mà họ chưa nghe về Chúa Giêsu. có khoảng 200 cái nhóm người ở trên toàn thế giới thuộc về những nhóm người đó. Và cái lúc mà David nói rằng chúng ta, những cái level đó thì chúng ta là trên này, những cái người unreached people group là ở dưới đây, và có một cái nhóm người nữa đặc biệt hơn ở dưới cùng đó là nhóm người mà họ unfortunate, những người không có ai tới họ được nữa. Trong những vùng sâu vùng xa, thậm chí những nơi đó là không hề có một cơ đốc nhân nào cả. Và cái phương pháp mà David muốn làm việc đó là ông muốn mở hội thánh và reach out những cái nhóm người, thậm chí ngay cả ở Mỹ cũng vậy, những nhóm người mà các hội thánh địa phương không muốn. Ví dụ như những người quá phụ, những trẻ em, những người bị tàn tật, tàn phế, những người mà hội thánh địa phương không muốn, hoặc là không muốn đầu tư, hoặc là không có thời gian để chăm sóc họ, thì đó là những người mà David có tấm lòng. Ông nói rằng trong chức vụ Chúa Giêsu đó, Chúa Giêsu thường đến với những con người là những người quá phụ, những người mồ côi, và cũng như là những cái người bệnh tật. Chúa Giêsu chữa bệnh cho họ, những con người mà xã hội ruồng bỏ, thì đó là những người mà Chúa Giêsu đã đến, thì không có lý do nào mà ông nói rằng chúng ta phải bỏ họ. Sau khi phát triển các hội thánh rồi thì họ đến một cái vấn đề tiếp theo, đó là cần phải phát triển một cái tài liệu huấn luyện, để nhờ đó mà nó có một cái consistency. Consistency có nghĩa là một sự giống nhau từ trước đã sau, không có nghĩa là họ huấn luyện một cách theo cái kiểu là đụng đâu làm đó, nhưng mà có tài liệu hẳn hoi. Và cái tài liệu đó nó được sản xuất trong những tài liệu mà David sẽ giới thiệu với chúng ta. Và họ có 10 quyển sách, và họ dạy cho các học sinh, sinh viên của họ đúng theo cái trình tự curriculum. Ngoài ra đó thì David cũng partner với lại các hội thánh, các tổ chức truyền giáo trên thế giới. Ví dụ như là tổ chức truyền giáo Campus Crusade for Christ cũng là một trong những cái partnership mà David đang làm việc. Và David, your background is with Southern Baptist, right? But who are you now?
Converge. I'm a little of everything.
Okay. Từ cái background là Baptist Nam Phương, nhưng mà bây giờ đối với một cái phong trào phát triển hội thánh mới thì David là you want to be everything for everyone.
That's
in order to save some.
There you go.
You're a biblical guy.
That's
Okay.
it.
Ông muốn trở nên là cái người phát triển hội thánh mới cho Chúa, chứ còn không muốn tự giam mình trong một cái giáo hội hoặc một cái tổ chức nào cả. Cảm ơn Chúa rằng đối với cái mô hình là sứ đồ, ông Phaolô đã đào tạo ra Timothy, và Timothy đã đào tạo ra Titus là Tích, thì đó là cái mô hình nhân giống mà chính ông thấy rằng nó sẽ có hiệu quả. Và qua cái mô hình đó thì David sẽ tiếp tục bày tỏ cho chúng ta cái bí mật, cái secret.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Nelm, I just want to be sure that I understood. You said that besides the philosophy of the Timothy Initiative, you also have the materials that are Bible-centered and obedience-oriented. Did I get it right?
Obedience-based discipleship, but yes.
Oh, okay.
See, we would say, remember that verse in James 1? Do not be hearers of the word only, deceiving yourselves, but be doers of the word. See, I think we deceive I think the way we try to disciple people here in the West, I think we deceive our people. We're not trying to, but we do. Our people think if they sit through classes and learn the scriptures that they are being discipled. But if all you do is hear it but not do it, that's not discipleship. We're deceiving ourselves. Does that make sense? So we would say the way you show that you really understand what you've learned is you put it into practice. You actually do it. For example, in TTI, we will not graduate a student until they start a church. They have to start a church. They have to raise up a couple of church planting students, their own Timothys, the Tituses, and they have to take care of an orphan or a widow or a sex slave or some type of social justice need. And so we would say the way you show you're qualified to graduate from a church planting school is not by reading books on church planting, not by writing papers on church planting, but by actually planting churches. You do it. And we hold them accountable We give the assignments, they come back, and we hold them accountable to make sure that they're actually doing it. And if somebody says, well, I want to join TTI, but I don't want to plant a church, then we would say, you cannot join TTI, because that's what we do. And so, yeah, it's obedience-based. I can go into the curriculum a little bit if you'd like. I think your students, at least, are very familiar with it. But the intro book is what we call DMD, Disciples Making Disciples. If out of our 12 books, if the only one you ever use is, if you can only use one, this is the one. This is the one that you should use. Because this is the philosophy, the heart, everything I'm talking about right now. This is what will help your students get their churches started. Okay? During this little book, it's a 15, 16-week course. During that time, they have to lead several people to the Lord, bring them together, start discipling them weekly. That little group becomes a church. And they have to raise up at least one or two of their own students, the Tituses, in 15 or 16 weeks. If they can do that, then we let them enter the 10-book core curriculum that we call TTI. We use this as an assessment tool. We determine who we're going to pour our lives into, who we're going to invest in. We choose those who do it. Okay? They have 15, 16 weeks to lead some people to the Lord, bring them together, start discipling them weekly, raise up one or two of their own disciples. If they can do that, we would say that person they're worth investing in. We're going to mentor them. We're going to spend our time there. We're going to invest in that person. All right? Then they can enter the 10 core book curriculum. It takes about 2 years to go through it. Each book is supposed to take, if you do it properly, about 25 to 35 hours in the classroom per book. Okay?
How much?
25 to 35 hours of in-classroom teaching. Outside of the classroom, we require 20 hours per book for field work. Field work means evangelism and discipleship, nothing else. Evangelism and discipleship.
You said 20?
20 more hours of field work per book. Okay? Now that's spread out over 2 years. All right? Now keep in mind, we don't plant churches in Los Angeles. You guys, I don't know how you live here. Your freeways are so crowded. It's so much traffic.
We don't live on freeway.
Oh my goodness. I think I'd rather go to Vietnam. I'm more scared of the traffic here than I am. It's crazy. But anyway, the 10 books are as follows. Book number 1 is How to Study the Bible, or hermeneutics. We put that first for a reason. We think there's a lot of isms out there. There's a lot of heresies, a lot of bad doctrine. We want the students to understand how to interpret, how to study the Bible. So book number 1 is How to Study the Bible. Book number 2, and by the way, we actually have 2 book number 1s. Okay, 1A was given to us by Dr. Earl Rodmacher. He died last year. Dr. Rodmacher was the former president of Western Seminary up in the Northwest. It's a great book, as good of a book ever written on the subject. The problem is it's written from a purely Western, it's line on line, precept on, it's typical Anglo thinking, okay? And so that does not translate real well, especially in the East. We now have a new number 1 book written by a converged missionary, Larry Caldwell. I don't know if you guys know Larry Caldwell. You know him, Fu? Ernie, you know him, don't you? He was, I think, a Filipino missionary, I believe. In fact, I think he still teaches some in Manila, your school over there.
Yes.
Where, Cebu?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That theology is one of those.
Yeah, Larry is brilliant. And Larry has written a new book number 1 for us that we still use the old number 1 here in Western type environments, but we use the new number 1 more in the East. Number 2 is how to teach the Bible. 1 is how to study the Bible. Number 2 is how to teach the Bible. And book number 3 is the book of Acts. We believe the best way to train a church planter is to study the book of Acts and then go do it. Do what the Bible said to do. See, guys, we believe the Bible is the only cross-cultural book ever written that applies to every single culture. We believe the Bible works everywhere. Okay? It works everywhere. It may not work to the same degree everywhere that it works here. For example, it's harder to plant churches today in the United States than it would be in a place like Nepal. The soil is different. Remember the soils Jesus talked about? You're not going to get the same results in Saudi Arabia that you're going to get in Kenya. But you will still get results because the Bible works everywhere. So book number 3 is the book of Acts. We simply teach the book of Acts and then say, don't add anything to it. Don't take anything away from it. Just go do what you just read. It works. Book number 4 and book number 5 both cover the entire Old Testament. Old Testament 1, Old Testament 2. They just look at the Old Testament from a different vantage point. One of them is more of an overview, and the other is a chronological look at the Old Testament. Book 5, I believe it is, was given to us by Dr. Wilmington, a longtime professor at Liberty University. We are connected with the Liberty Church Planting Network. We do their church planting overseas. He's a friend of our ministry, and again, we edited it, tweaked it some, but that's book number 5. By the way, why have 2 books covering the entire Old Testament? Why? What's that?
It's a big.
Yeah, it's 70% of your Bible. And typically, we'll have one little quick overview of the Old Testament, which is 70% of the Bible. If you look at the cults around the world, especially in Africa, they tend to be a confusion between law and grace. Okay, they get the two confused and mixed up. So we cover the entire Old Testament, then we come back and cover the entire Old Testament again, and we feel like that's in their advantage. Book number 6 is the Gospels. Book number 7 would be the pastoral epistles, Timothy and Titus, which will have a lot to do with leading churches and dealing with church problems. I think you taught on that yesterday, Fu. It's amazing as a pastor, when I used to study Timothy and Titus verse by verse, it was almost like Paul was sitting there in my congregation. It's almost like he was writing about my congregation. The principles are timeless. Okay? And then the next book, number 8, would be the general epistles, which covers everything from Romans through Revelation, all the letters, other than Titus and Timothy. Book number 9 is major Bible doctrines. And then book number 10 is 3 books in one, 3 little books: apologetics, church history, spiritual warfare. 3 little booklets, if you would, combined into one book. And somebody asked me, why did you do it that way? Well, the answer is not a good answer. The answer is I ran out of money, so I just put 3 together. That's why we did it that way.
So you said apologetics, spiritual warfare, and what?
Church history. They're little, think pamphlets as opposed to, or booklets as opposed to books. And if I ever slow down and get the time, we're going to take that one and make it 3 books. Okay? Then finally, so you have an intro book. This is the key right here. Then you have the 10 books. That's 11 books. Then you have a 12th book that we call TTI Light. Not light like that light, but light like a Diet Coke. Okay? Lightweight. Okay? And what we've done is we basically have taken the principles of the 10 books, which would be like this, and we brought it down to 1 book. This is not exactly accurate, but think 1 chapter of the 10 books down to 1 page in TTI Light. Instead of narrative, more bullet points, if you will. Why do we do that? Let's say, I got to stay in front of this camera, don't I? You want me right here?
You can go over.
I can walk around?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, I don't like cameras. Okay, let's suppose you guys right here, I'm going to be Paul, and you're going to be my Timothys. All right, we call the ladies Timotheas. Okay, so Timothy's. So Timothy, Timothy. Okay, I'm gonna mentor you. I'm gonna train you, and you've got to go lead people to the Lord. So you guys are going to lead these people over here to the Lord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. Perfect. Each of you lead 2 of these to the Lord. All right. Now, remember, you got to start mentoring them. While I'm mentoring you, you've got to mentor them. We're going to give you DMD and the 10 books and TTI Light. But we're also going to give you, 2 more DMDs and 2 more TTI Lights. And you're going to give those to your 2 disciples right here. So I'm teaching you through DMD, then you're going to teach these 2 guys through DMD. So we're going to give you 3 DMD books, 1 for you and 1 more for your 2 disciples. Then we're going to give you 3 TTI Lights, 1 for you, 1 more for each of your disciples. So actually each student gets 16 books is what they get. But 4 of those books you use to train them. So you take them through the full DMD book, and then you take them through a summarized version of the 10 books by using TTI Light. Does that make sense? That's kind of, so what you've got, this is one reason it works. You're not sitting there just listening to me. You're going right out there and teaching them what I'm teaching you. It's just a condensed version of it, okay? So you've got them, see, we believe we've mixed it up. We think that the way that first people have to mature, then you send them out into ministry. We believe the way you mature people is by sending them out to do ministry. The ministry is the exercise. If all you do is eat but don't exercise, what happens? You get fat, you die of a heart attack. Okay? We believe the quickest way to help someone mature in the faith, yes, you must teach them, but you immediately get them doing ministry, as opposed to putting them through 4 years of school, 6 years of school, and then sending them out.
David nói rằng cái tài liệu mà họ huấn luyện đó thì nó hoàn toàn dựa vào cái quy tắc là phải vâng phục để làm việc. Vì ông nói rằng trong Gia Cờ đoạn 1 thì cho chúng ta biết rằng là nhiều khi chúng ta chỉ nói thôi nhưng mà không có làm, cho nên chúng ta tự lừa dối mình. Và cái phương pháp này nó hoàn toàn dựa vào sự vâng phục, có nghĩa là bạn học được cái điều gì thì bạn sẽ ra đi và làm ngay. Bạn sẽ không có được tốt nghiệp cái chương trình này nếu bạn không có một cái hội thánh đã được do chính mình mở ra. Và cái tài liệu mà ông nói rằng đó là quan trọng nhất là cái tài liệu DMD, có nghĩa là Disciples Making Disciples, là cái tài liệu quan trọng nhất, cái quyển số 11. Nếu trong tất cả 12 quyển sách mà họ có mà chúng ta không thể học hết thì học cái quyển này trước, là quyển số 11 là DMD. Khi mà chúng ta học được cái quyển sách đó rồi đó thì chúng ta nắm bắt được tất cả những điều quan trọng nhất của chương trình này và chúng ta sẽ có thời gian tiếp theo. Sau khi mà mở một hội thánh rồi và có những cái tín hữu trong hội thánh của mình rồi đó thì bạn mới được nhận vào chương trình học tiếp theo của 10 cuốn sách. Ông nói rằng tài liệu DMD này là một cái tài liệu giống như là định giá, coi thử bạn có thật sự ready chưa để làm công việc Chúa. Tài liệu này nó sẽ học trải dài ra khoảng 2 năm và mỗi cái quyển sách thì phải học từ 25 đến 35 giờ cộng thêm 20 giờ field work. Field work ở ngoài có nghĩa là đi làm chứng đạo và phải đặt những cái gì mình học vào trong cái hành động của mình. Ông nói rằng chỉ có đọc sách và làm bài viết sách vở đó thì không thể tốt nghiệp được cái chương trình này, cũng như không thể làm được gì cả. Chúng ta phải học. Và ông giới thiệu sơ lược qua từng sách một. Quyển sách thứ nhất là về giải kinh cũng như là cách để học kinh thánh. Và sách 1 có 2 cuốn, 1A, 1B, thì cuốn 1B là làm thế nào để dạy kinh thánh. Nhiều khi chúng ta học kinh thánh là một chuyện, nhưng mà chúng ta dạy kinh thánh có nghĩa là khi chúng ta áp dụng được cái điều chúng ta hiểu thì nó hoàn toàn trái ngược, cho nên hoặc là khác nhau, cho nên ông nói rằng chúng ta phải học cái cách để dạy nữa, sư phạm. Sách thứ 3 là sách về công vụ các sứ đồ, và ông nghĩ rằng đó là cái cuốn sách action cho chúng ta. Đó là lý do tại sao nó nằm ở cuốn thứ 3. Thứ 4 là về cựu ước có 2 sách, thứ 4, thứ 5. Cái thứ 6 là về các sách phúc âm. Thứ 7 là về các thư tín mục vụ, Timôthê nhất, Timôthê nhì và Tít. Sách thứ 8 là sách về các thư tín còn lại. Sách thứ 9 là các sách về thần học căn bản. Sách thứ 10 là bao gồm trong đó có biện minh học, lịch sử hội thánh, cũng như là những cái điều quan trọng khác trong Kinh Thánh. Sách thứ 11 là cái cuốn DMD này, và cái 12 đó là cuốn TTI Lite. TTI Lite là một cái cuốn tóm tắt lại của 11 sách phía trước, và ông nói rằng giống như là chúng ta có cái Coca-Cola Diet đó, thì cái cuốn này nó cũng giống như vậy, nó summarize lại tất cả những cuốn kia. Ông David cho chúng ta biết rằng họ tin rằng một cái người mà trưởng thành trong Chúa không phải là được huấn luyện ngồi trong Sunday School học hỏi hoài hết năm này đến năm kia, nhưng mà cái người được trưởng thành đó là khi chúng ta học xong và chúng ta phải đặt họ vào cái môi trường làm việc ngay, thì họ vừa học mà vừa được huấn luyện chà sát như vậy, thì họ sẽ trưởng thành trong Chúa và họ sẽ nhờ ơn của Đức Thánh Linh để mà trưởng thành hơn. Ông cũng nói rằng về cái phương pháp để huấn luyện cái tài liệu này đó thì không phải là dễ là mọi người đều có thể làm được, nhưng mà dựa vào Kinh Thánh, là cái cuốn Kinh Thánh mà ông nói rằng là một cái cuốn cross cultural book, nó có thể work tất cả mọi nơi. Kinh Thánh là một cái quyển sách mà tuyệt vời nhất và duy nhất có thể được ứng dụng cho tất cả các nền văn hóa trên toàn thế giới. Cho nên qua cái tài liệu Kinh Thánh này mà được chẻ nhỏ ra như vậy đó, thì nó sẽ giúp cho mọi văn hóa, mọi tiếng nói và mọi dân tộc. Đó là cái phần vừa rồi mà David trình bày.
Okay, thank you. The only thing I understood was Coca-Cola Light, okay, or diet. Yeah, diet. I do understand some Vietnamese. Okay, open your Bibles to Ephesians 4, verse 11 through 13. Ephesians 4, verses 11 through 13. Let me talk for a second about what we just mentioned there. See, I believe we have got it a little bit out of order as far as the disciple-making process. Okay? While you're opening your Bible, let me tell you a story. There is a man, and you guys are pretty studious, so you ought to write this down. There's a book you ought to read called Wiki Church. Have any of you ever read that book? Wiki, W-I-K-I, Church. Andrew, I think we ought to make that a requirement. Wiki Church. It was written by a man named Steve Morrell. I think I'm pronouncing it right. I actually met with Steve earlier this week. It was a real honor to meet with him. Let me tell you his story, because it has a real bearing on what you're trying to do. Andrew, especially, the vision you shared with me last night, this would be a really good book for you to read. Okay? Steve was raised as a Presbyterian here in the States. His youth pastor was a very famous Presbyterian youth leader. And then later he had a Pentecostal experience, so he calls himself a Presbycostal, okay? Presbycostal is kind of a mixture of the two. In the 80s, he went with a group of American 20-year-olds to Manila to start a church. The intent was to be there for about 2 months. By the end of the 2 months, the summer had ended, all the Americans were coming home. The church had grown to, I don't know, a couple of hundred people. They had no one to take the church, so what do? Somebody had to stay. So the group of Americans got together, and this one said, well, I can't, and I'm getting married, and I got a job, and Steve was the odd man out. He was the only one that could stay. He had no intentions of staying, didn't want to stay. But somebody had to stay. So he stayed. For the next 10 years, and I may have the times off a little bit here, but for the next 10 years or so, the church really grew. And it got up to about 2,000 people. Now, they were excited. But one day, Steve and his staff looked out over their congregation. And here's what they concluded. We have many Christians, many attenders, but we do not have hardly any disciple makers. Very few, if any. They had come to the conclusion that Jesus commanded us not to plant churches, but to make disciples. Listen very closely. If you hear nothing else I say today, this is most important. Because I did not understand this most of my life. Nowhere does the Bible command us to plant churches. Remember, I'm a church planter. I've had a little part in planting 34,000 churches. There's no one more in favor of planting churches than I am. That is my hobby. Some guys play golf. Some guys go swimming. I like to plant churches. Okay? But nowhere does the Bible tell us to plant churches. The Bible commands us to make disciples. Steve puts it this way. Here's what Steve says, and I'm quoting him. Jesus said, I will build my church, and commanded us to make disciples. We try to build the church while neglecting making disciples. At least that's what I did. And that's what I think many of us pastors do. We're not trying to do it, but that's really what we do. Let me say it again. Jesus said, I will build my church. You make disciples. We try to build the church while neglecting making disciples. And that's why we have some of the problems, I think, that we have. So Steve was beginning to understand this. He understood it about 15 years before I did. Okay? And so they looked out over their crowd, and here's what they saw. We have a lot of Christians here. We have a lot of people that have left whatever they had left, Catholicism, whatever, and have become, a personal relationship with Jesus. But he said we didn't have hardly any disciple makers. So he and his staff made a decision that day. They said, from this point on, we're going to focus on making disciples. And if our growth slows down, then it slows down. But we're going to be obedient to the Great Commission. As far as the 2,000 they already had, their conclusion was, I'm just going to tell you what he said, we've already messed them up. There's nothing we can do with them. So we're just going to keep preaching. We're going to keep the church services going. But from this point on, we're going to focus on making disciples. Now, for the next 2 or 3 years, their growth, it had been, if you had charted it, it had been like that. Now it leveled off to just a little bit of growth. You see, discipleship is slow. It takes time.